I'm not a big fan of the YouTuber trick of doing before you buy, but I wanted to jump in the conversation about the RG406H. Before you buy anything else, consider this. Maybe you're rushing to the holidays to spend your bonus and buy something for yourself or a Christmas present, or you're watching this in the future and you're trying to decide, how does this thing match up to the competition? That's what we're going to discuss today. We're going to look at features, performance, and the value against the Retroid products and a few other cheap options that are out there. Firstly, I'd like to thank PCBWay for sponsoring today's video. This is our last video for 2024. They have supported me throughout the year. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. They are an online ordering system for custom PCBs, CNC milling, plastic molding for cases and stuff for projects that you're working on. Anything that you can think of where you want to develop an electronic prototype or a project for yourself, PCBWay is the place to go. They have an excellent online ordering system. They have a help feature where people are happy to help if you're struggling with your order. So go check out PCBWay. And thanks so much again for sponsoring this channel through 2024. This is $182 on the Anbernic website, excluding shipping. Without a card, it is $167.99. That's excluding shipping. Now, Lit NXT sent this to me, and so their pricing, which is interesting because it's $219 including shipping. Now, so what you will need to do is check, because for some people, it's more expensive to ship from Anbernic than it is to buy from someone like Lit NXT. Without an SD card, $219 including shipping from Lit NXT. Okay, so those are a few prices just to keep in mind when comparing to this. This is $219 excluding shipping from Retroid's websites. The thing to bear in mind with the Retroid Pocket 5 is that it has more power. It has a Snapdragon chipset, which has more compatibility with a lot of these emulators, especially for the higher end games. It is a 16:9 screen. You know, I was showing this to my son and I realized he prefers 16:9 so he can play his Android games. So definitely something to consider there. And then it has the retro button configuration, you know, the dpad up top and the joystick at the bottom. So this has an absolutely stunning AMOLED screen, probably one of the best screens to come out of any device on the market this year. So very, very nice screen on here. $219 excluding shipping. So the Retroid Pocket Mini. Now this is a mini version of the Retroid Pocket 5, a 3.7-inch screen. Now, compared to the Anbernic, this is a 4-inch screen, which is a considerable size bump. It doesn't sound like it, 0.3 of an inch, but it is a considerable size bump. This, again, has the Snapdragon chipset like the Retroid Pocket 5. It has a bit less RAM, so the performance isn't quite on the level of the Retroid Pocket 5, but you know, you can play Wii U games on here, you can play Switch games on here, you can play Wii games, you know, the higher end games, GameCube, PS2, all those sort of things. This sort of tops out with PS2 and GameCube. Then your Switch and your Wii U and all those sort of systems are bonuses on this one. So this has more performance, but now size. This is not that much smaller. Even though it is the Mini, it isn't that much smaller. If you see the side there, it just isn't that much smaller. And you've got the ergonomic bumps on this one. These sticks stick out quite a bit on here, and we'll talk about that later. But in the end, you're not getting a massive difference in size with this. There's a lot of concessions you make with a Retroid Pocket Mini, so you've got to really want it. That's the kind of point I'm making there. And the Retroid Pocket Mini is $199 before shipping. And so I'm putting the numbers on the screen now, and you can make your decision there. The budget options, I've got the PowerKitty RGB Max 3. This is a sort of mini Retroid Pocket 5. I think it has the RK35666 chipsets on here, so much lower spec device, but a nice cheap alternative with a 16:9 screen. And then you've got and that one sits at $99 shipped from Lit NXT. So that's a deal. Like for anyone that just wants to play low-end games, the old original like Game Boy, NES, Mega Drive, these two cheaper options are definitely worth considering. If you saw this and think that's great, but wow, that's expensive, these are the ones to go for. So this is the PowerKitty RG406H. These names are ridiculous. And this is a lovely, I don't like this blue, but there are some nice color options on this one. Nice little comfy design. And this has their H700 chipset on here, sort of like tried and trusted at this point. Some quirks to it, but this is $85.99 from Lit NXT shipped to your doorstep. So that is a very, very good deal with the same size screen as the Powkiddy RG406H. So very, very good deal. So the standout features of these RG406H devices, the one is the ergonomics. The cube, I really liked this little grip that came on the cube, this ergonomic grip. It's exactly the same. This is a stretched RG cube. So if you own the RG cube and you thought to yourself, I would love this in a stretched version, this is that. The grips are a little bit more grippy, which I quite like. And it's got a really nice ergonomic for such a, is that a word? Ergonomic for such a small device. So very good feeling there. The controls, it's got this Sega style D-pad, which I love. Wrong configuration in my opinion, but very nice D-pad, very nice joysticks. They are smooth and got a great range of motion. These triggers are pretty good. Nice, smooth analog triggers. These are clicky bumpers, but very nice, you know, full range of use. Maybe right at the end here it doesn't work. So excellent controls, definitely a standout feature on here. And then to go with ergonomics, I feel like this is a separate topic, is the feeling in hand. And this grippiness, they've used a lovely textured plastic which follows through on the clear. Yeah, it's not quite the same as the opaque color, but definitely a nice texture to the plastic, which I really enjoy. It's got a great feeling in hand. Very, very nice. And compared to the Retroid, you know, this grip is actually more accentuated than the Retroid. I still love picking the Retroid up. It's got a great feeling in hand with a sort of stippled back. So kind of on par there in terms of feeling in hand. And then that 4x3 screen. That is definitely a standout feature. It's got a great resolution. It looks fantastic. So here I like to speculate what could have been. What should they have rather done with this device? I do feel that the D-pad should have been up top, especially with the amount of power that this thing offers and the sort of configuration of it. I'm mostly, to be honest, going to play NES games on here. The cube made sense. They kind of marketed this as a bit of a 3DS device. 3DS had the joystick up top. It's got the Switch style joystick. So the cube made sense. Like I played it just with a joystick. That's how I played this device. Whereas these are sort of full range of motion joysticks, and it just doesn't quite feel right having it on the top with a device with this amount of power and what you will be playing on this device. I think they should have put Snapdragon on here. We're just speculating here, but I think, you know, Snapdragon would have been the ultimate. CMU emulator for Wii U would have worked better on here. Switch emulation would have been better on here. 3DS emulation would have been better on here. A lot of things would have benefited from a Snapdragon chip. I definitely think they should have recessed these joysticks. They are way too protruding. Like it's just ridiculous. Like it's too much. Okay, speaking about hardware, firstly, the chipset, you were going to top out at, like I said, PS2 and GameCube. You're going to hit your ceiling with Switch emulation. 3DS is not fantastic on here. It works, but there are some concessions to be made. I think it's a lot to do with the emulator as well, but I didn't have flawless 3DS experience on here. You can also do Wii U emulation with the CMU emulator, which means there's been a bit of development on the CMU emulator, which is great. Also, not a lot of games, very low-end games from the Wii U will work on here. So you top out at PS2, 3DS, GameCube, and then you get a little bit of Switch and Wii U emulation on here as well. Okay, so a quick Contra test here, and actually, to be honest, it fails the Contra test hopelessly, and I'll put that footage on the screen as well. So I'm doing a little bit of a Street Fighter test, and it's actually a little bit more difficult to do my moves than it would be a normal D-pad. So as much as I love this D-pad, it's not as good as just a normal D-pad. And then these joysticks, there's very little snapping to cardinals. It's easy to get motion in these corner areas. I think they feel a bit better than the Retroid Pocket 5, and I think that's because of how much they protrude out of the body. So there's a positive to that even though it's not as pocketable, you're getting a nicer range of motion because of how much they stick out of the device. The shake test, very nice. So Anbernic for a long time have made their devices very rattly, even high-end devices. But I do think it's touch and go with them sometimes. But anyway, so there, I've got 2 devices I can test. A little bit more rattly, but yeah, not bad. So screen test is great because in low lights, this actually goes really, really dim. It is difficult, like all of these with the slider adjustment to get to those last few increments. And it is very bright as well. Maybe not direct sunlight at the beach, but if you're at the beach, why the hell are you playing games? But other than that, a very, very nice spread of dim to very bright on the screen, and the colors are not washed out. It is a very good screen. And then our famous crotch time, which is something that everybody looks out for on my channel. Like I mentioned, these sticks are going to get in the way. So if I simulate running around, therein lies the problem. Those sticks are going to catch, but if you are aware of it, you can do that. You can even see the sticks are making a little lump there. And then people are going to say, what's that in your pockets? And I'm going to say, it's my stick. It's my joystick. And that will be awkward. Not the best pocketability. As you can see, it sat in our pocket nicely. I think had this been recessed, had these joysticks been recessed on the Anbernic, it actually would have been fairly pocketable. So, oh well. And then a quick weight test. Here's the Retroid Pocket Mini, which is 231.5 grams. This is, the Anbernic is 263.6. And then the Retroid Pocket 5 is 282, 263, so almost exactly 20 grams lighter. And that is a little piece of information that will have no bearing on your choice of buying this device. Okay, moving on. Now, perceived quality, I gotta say, this is one of the very few times perceived quality. So I have only had this for a few days, so I can't tell you if it is exceptional quality. You can message me in a few months and ask me how it's going with it. But perceived quality is a 5. It is not rattly. These sticks feel great and solid in the device. The plastics are, and the buttons are really solid and feel great. So a 5 for perceived quality. Okay, so let's do a little audio test with Sonic. I'm going to hold it up here. Okay, so that is, now it was firing towards me in the studio, so you will hear on the YouTubes how that sounds. Okay, so the Anbernic was at full volume. Let's test the Sonic the Hedgehog out. So definitely a marked improvement with the Retroid Pocket 5. Downward facing speakers on the Anbernic, but still pretty decent sound. Let's quickly test the Mini. So strangely, I actually think the Mini was louder there. So just for interest's sake, this thing is downward facing speakers. So obviously more tinny, but you're not losing a lot when you're going for a budget device on audio. I mean, you're going to get better audio here. Definitely like markedly better audio on the Retroid, but in the greater scheme of things, especially for retro games, it's not such a big deal. Okay, now I want to quickly test the charging options here. So I'm just going to the back here. Now obviously a normal 5-volt charger as I've got here is going to work fine. And then I've got this 45 watt USB-C to USB-C charger, and that does work. This one in particular is sketchy. I don't know if it's the cable or whatever. It doesn't always work with devices that are fussy. So this one works, so the charging should be fine on this. That's something that would be a long-term test, but it does seem like it's okay. I know sometimes Anbernic don't do something right. I don't know if it's on the software side or the way that they install their USB-C ports, but it doesn't always work very well. And while we're doing that, we're going to test pass-through charging. So I have this little pass-through charger for my XR glasses. These are my Vertua XR glasses, really nice XR glasses. If you are looking for ones, I'll put the link in the description below because they are really, really good. Now, what I have found with this chipset, these devices like the Cube and the other ones, I need to plug all my things into my pass-through and then plug it in. to get the effects of the charging. So let's just see here. There we go. So I got it to work. Nah. So pass-through isn't working here. So I think it's a software thing because sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Okay, so what's nice here with getting your video out here is that you now have the option to set it from the drop-down menu. Retroid have put this now in their handheld settings menu, but they didn't have anything in the past, so you had to go into developer mode. So Retroid do have it now, but still, drop-down menu, you can set this. So now you can have desktop mode, handheld console mode. Let's just check your HDMI screen connected. The downside there is I opened PSP and God of War, I couldn't play it in desktop mode. So if you have it in desktop mode, it reads any inputs here as here. So it starts controlling the device and starts trying to open apps while I'm trying to control the game, which is here on the screen. So you have to set it to the other mode, which is just copying the screen, the 4:3 screen, to your projector or to your screen. And so you're forced to use 4:3 no matter what display you're using. I hope they fix that in some sort of update, but at the moment it has to do with the controls being here and the screen being over there. So anyway, downside. And that definitely is an upside to having the 16:9 screen. You can just project this screen to your eyes or your screen, and you can have exactly what you want, the 16:9 displayed there. So let's talk a little bit about aesthetics, because I really think that Anbernic have nailed it here. I luckily have two colors here, and I'll show some nice footage of these. I've always been a fan of a purple, a see-through purple, atomic purple vibes. And so this really is lovely. It's the perfect amount of see-throughness. I just ordered the black clear plastic back for this, and I'm putting that in another video. Highly disappointed in this because it is so dark that you can't see through it very slightly. So it's very, very subtle. This is see-through enough that you can see all the bits and pieces, and it looks pretty cool. So that's nice. And then the white, I just think the white is lovely. I am a big fan of white with the rainbow LEDs. So that's really nice. Comparing to the Retroids, I think that I'm quite a fan of this mini design. I like the way this thing turned out. The screen is sort of disappointingly small, but yeah, I like the design of this. I like the look of it. I like the way it's shaped. And I think this has less of a grip on it. Like I said, I think this should have just not had a grip at all. But the grips on here really are nice. And I really don't know where Anbernic can go from here. I mean, recess the sticks, put more power in it. You know, what else? I mean, there's not much they can do. It's just kind of almost perfect. So in terms of the user interface, like always, they have the sketchy sort of apps that are actually paid apps and ripped apps that are here that for you to use. Generally, I just delete everything and start from scratch. I've already installed my own version of RetroArch. I get something called Obtainium. I get Obtainium and all the GitHub things, all the things that are from GitHub, like RetroArch. I put it onto Obtainium and it keeps them up to date. So that's how I download all those things. And then I just set it up from scratch, use my own ROMs, all that sort of thing. What they have included is a handheld game console settings menu, which is Retroid have always had that. Now they have this where you can tweak the joysticks, you can test your keys. The quick launcher, let's have a look there. Oh. So if there are other home screens, you can choose your home screen there. Fan configuration, ambient light, where you can set the lights on the joysticks. So yeah, that's nice. I'm glad that they are thinking in that direction finally with their Android build. You know, after all that, after looking at this, is there anything that they've really sort of glaringly missed on this device? Now, I think that both Retroid and Anbernic made the wrong decision in terms of D-pad placement. So this is a less powerful device, and I feel like the D-pad should have been up top, especially with these very clunky joysticks and the power delivery and the shape and the size of this thing. I think the D-pad should have been up top. So that's maybe like a glaring misstep. Same for Retroid, you know, I think at this power level, this thing can do streaming, which is really nice. Well, this can also do streaming, but this is more conducive to that with a 16:9 screen. And so I really feel like the joysticks should have been at the top on this one. But other glaring missteps, maybe recess these joysticks a little bit, add a little bit more power. But you know, this is what's interesting, because this device is kind of marking Anbernic's perfect Android device. They can tweak the software a little bit, they can recess the sticks a little bit. Maybe people will be upset and we can put the dpad up at the top. But essentially, they've peaked. Like, this is, I think, the best we are going to get out of Anbernic in terms of a nice 4x3 retro gaming Android handheld. There's always the option to go cheaper, like those other alternatives that I recommended. But in terms of a 4x3 retro handheld device, this is the device. So to summarize, who is this device for? Firstly, it's for 4x3 aficionados. If you want pixel perfect rendering of all your retro games, this device is definitely for you. Secondly, non-performance hungry people, you don't mind spending the money on a slightly more expensive device to play PS2 and GameCube, and a little bit of that slightly harder to emulate systems. And then also, thirdly, it's for anyone who wants to play the OG systems like Mega Drive, Super Famicom, NES, but you don't want Linux, or you just don't want any of the cheaper devices.